are these people?
Well, you brought this.
Yep. It's not as if you're going to look at it for a few seconds anyway. But
yeah.
Like I said earlier, the No Kings protests occurred in every state over the weekend. As I mentioned, I saw a glimpse of it over the weekend doing errands. I skipped said protest. I did my groceries and came right home. But there were a lot of people who were saying, oh, it was a success given the amount of people that attended, and like people made a lot of noise, obviously, about their displeasure about Trump and all the things. So we're going to do two things. We're going to be fair. We're going to talk about it from a positive point of view. And then thanks to Indy, we're going to dial that back and give more of what we collectively share as a critique. And you guys can let us know what you guys think in terms of the No Kings protest. So this article is written by Mike Ludwig from Truthout, where he reports 5 million people attended No Kings protests. How can we build on this? The protests were inspired by the idea that 3.5% of a population must rise up successfully, reject authoritarianism. So Mike, there we go. So Mike writes, can you zoom in? Thank you. Organizers say about 5 million people participated in No Kings protests against President Donald Trump and his administration's abuses of power in hundreds of towns and cities across the United States on Saturday, June 14th. Demonstrations, large and small, offered a sharp rebuke to Trump's decision to deploy the military in response to protests against immigration raids in Los Angeles. And now activists from various movements are moving to harness the backlash into a sustained movement capable of toppling Trumpian authoritarianism. The No Kings protests were inspired by the 3.5% principle, which posts that movements against authoritarianism that engage 3.5% of the population had never failed to bring about change.
Where's that
The demonstrations provided, I have no idea.
Where are they getting that shit from?
I should have looked into this, to be honest, but
yeah.
But again, we have a critique on this, which we'll share later, but we'll talk about that a little bit more toward after I'm done with that, at least, because I'm sure I know you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I can look it up.
The demonstration, why don't you look it up while I continue reading this?
Yep.
The demonstrations provided people with a venue to call out Trump for his implementation of cruel and extreme policies that are tearing apart families and spreading fear in communities nationwide. The mass turnout of protesters nationwide also drowned out Trump's efforts to boost his strongman image by wasting up to $45 million in public funds to throw a gaudy military parade in Washington, D.C. on his birthday, which also happened to be on June 14th. So basically, this military parade, as I have said, was just an excuse to celebrate his birthday. Now, he could have just said that, right? I want to celebrate my birthday. I'm going to have this thing. Okay, fine. But he made it all about the Army, and it just happened to align with the 250th anniversary of the Army in this country. So he made it about that. But it just kind of seemed to be like, that this is more about you. You don't give a shit about the Army at all. So just say, I want to celebrate my birthday.
Clicking this link, which articles are always in the description if you want to go digging deeper. But in 1986, millions of Filipinos took to the streets of Manila in peaceful protest and prayer in the People Power movement. The Marcos regime folded on the fourth day. In 2003, the people of Georgia ousted Edward Shevardnadze through the Bloodless Rose Revolution, in which protesters stormed the Parliament building holding the flowers in their hands. Right? And this is supposedly nonviolent protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts, and those engaging a threshold of 3.5% of the population have never failed to bring about change. Again, no citation of that. You know, like I would like to see where you're getting those numbers from, because I don't know if
Right.
that's fucking accurate at all. Like the amount of times violent fucking revolution has done some shit might be a bit more than that, you know? But
Mhm.
what the fuck do I know? That's from David Robson. I don't know, at Harvard. So that's the basis. This dude's non-cited fucking bullshit. Anyway, continue. You need that though. There you go.
Yeah. Participants in the mass protests condemned the cruelty of Trump's mass deportation campaign, which is targeting law-abiding parents and school children. Protesters also decried the cuts proposed by Republicans in Congress to many of this country's basic safety net programs, cuts proposed to pay for Trump's signature tax cuts, which primarily benefit the wealthy. On top of these cruel policies are Trump's own autocratic behavior, raw rhetoric, and decadent displays of rank nationalism, including the president's decision to use the U.S. Army's anniversary celebration as an excuse for made-for-TV propaganda starring himself.
Right.
The demonstrations marked one of the single days of protests in U.S. history, according to Joe Dinkin, Deputy National Director of the Working Families Party. In America, we don't have kings, and Trump's abuses of power are generating a counter-reaction, Dinkin said in an interview. People are not liking what they're seeing from the administration. They don't like the attacks on civil rights, the attacks on Medicaid, and the attacks on food assistance. That is what is generating enormous backlash.
Here, I help you.
The proposed cuts to programs on which people depend stand in sharp contrast to the decadent parade Trump held on June 14th. On Capitol Hill, 60 veteran and military family members were arrested for staging an sit-in to protest against the parade and Trump's politicization of the army. As veterans, we were able to break into the mainstream narrative about Trump's birthday parade and assert that Americans want money for people, not parades, wrote Brittany Ramos de Barros, an organizing director with About Face, Veterans Against the War, in a newsletter on Monday. De Barros added, go
Where am
up.
I at? Oh, there it is.
Thank you. These kinds of celebrations of military might, while military is being used to terrorize immigrants in LA and starve children in Palestine, is beyond grotesque.
Yep.
People are also upset over Trump's show of force in LA, where the administration responded to protests last weekend by deploying U.S. Marines and National Guard troops in defiance of state and local leaders. With his constituents angry and fearful, Senator Alex Padilla attempted to ask questions during a press conference inside a federal building held by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, but was quickly tackled by officers and handcuffed.
Mm.
Instead of apologizing, Noem doubled down, claiming the sitting U.S. Senator failed to identify himself inside a federal building in his home state. After a week of sensational news coverage and partisan attacks, support for Trump's approach to immigration began to slip in the polls. Americans were also uncomfortable with the president sending in the military to U.S. cities, with 47 pluralities telling pollsters they opposed Trump's moves in LA. Dinkins said it was critical that people are showing up for protests at a time when the Trump administration has literally arrested Democratic politicians for questioning.
Oh, I should be paying attention. Why is it not going? Do the thing. There you go.
Questioning about the immigration crackdown, including Newark Mayor Ras Baraka and Representative LaMonica McIver in New Jersey. In LA, police roughed up and arrested union leader David Huerta for protesting peacefully against immigration raids last week. We need people to be brave in the face of authoritarianism, Dinkins said. From here, we continue getting organized in our communities in order to throw them out of power in the midterms and remove Trump from office pretty soon after that. Elections are the best way we have to remove this authoritarian threat, and getting organized in our communities is the best way that we do that.
Vote harder. Vote harder.
Right. Dinkins said the work of organizing against authoritarianism will look different in different places. For example, people in red districts must continue to hold town halls and confront Republican members of Congress over proposed safety net cuts and their refusal to rein in Trump's abuses of executive authority. In other jurisdictions, it might mean stepping up to run for local office yourself, helping to get educated on your rights. It might mean joining economic boycotts out there, such as the Target boycott, Dinkins said. Dinkins said that the Working Families Party is running 1,000 working class candidates up and down the ballot in various states this year and next, and voting remains a major bulwark to authoritarianism. The challenge is rebuilding trusting relationships with each other, despite the fractures in society created as Trump has sought to divide and conquer. It's Trump and it's also the media environment that increasingly has people captured in feuds that only tell them what they want to hear, that is growing at the same time as a decline in participation in civic organizations and decline in the strength of unions, Dinkins said. These are the things that really connect us in trusting relationships, and that is what we mean by organizing relationships of trust.
Okay.
I'm just reading this again slowly.
Yeah.
No, but he's saying what is going to have people trust each other is participation in civic organizing,
and like
strengthening unions.
Right.
I thought you build trust in people by essentially, well, if we're speaking of politicians, actually having them do what they're supposed to do.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Right. But that's the problem that I have with this stinking dork here. It
don't make no motherfucking sense.
I mean, he's talking about it in terms of what we are supposed to do, not what the politicians themselves are elected to do.
The ones with power. Right.
Right. So it's like, oh, you guys have to be the ones, and some of you might remember when I confronted AOC at the Capitol several years ago, like my little viral moment. Like I asked her, because she was like, you got to do this. You are the ones that have to organize. And I said, what are you going to do?
Right.
Like
we're here organizing.
Because right, we've been organizing. So how are you going? So what I really want, so what I was saying is, how are you going to capitalize on the organizing that is happening to elevate that to Congress and make a stand? And she didn't answer that. If anything, I got tuned out literally by Cori Bush. But yeah, it's just the idea of like, oh, you have to be the ones to organize. You have to be the ones that push the politicians. You. And it's never, oh, how about the politicians do the fucking job for a change and actually care about their constituents and actually move in a way that actually delivers for their constituent? Like, I'm not hearing that from this article, and I'm not hearing that from this guy. And as you said, it's more like you have to vote for these people in the hope that they're going to do something. Well, right now they're not doing anything. So what are you doing now to challenge them? Now he's saying, oh, you have to run for office yourself. But how's that any different from what's happening now? Like, you're going to have people running, but have no moral implications as to what their plans are. But then more importantly, as I keep saying, a lot of these politicians are just coming in with money or the position or just fame to run. They're not vetted in terms of what they've been doing in their cities and towns. They don't have a record in terms of actually winning something for these constituents. So it's like you're getting random people who have no connection to their communities at all, who just decide out of, I have the mindset to change the world, but they get easily corrupted. Like,
Right.
that's how you build trust, is actually have people who are in organizing already actually doing the work that are elevated to these positions to make change, not just getting random people who get the feel of the wind of, I should run because I hate this person, or in this case, I hate Trump.
Right.
But they have no record as to winning anything for the people that they're meant to serve. That's why we get into these problems with politicians all the time. And even like in New York, like with the mayoral race that's going on right now with whatever I forgot his name right now. But
Right.
no record in terms of him actually winning something for New York or any borough that I know of. But I guess he just decided one day, I'm just going to run because I can, which you have the right to do, but without a record of showing your capability of what you actually gain for people, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just feel
It
like,
don't make no
again, in this
motherfucking
article,
sense.
I just feel in this article, it was just more subtle blame of, not blame, but like all the energy should be on us to do the work and not the politicians who in themselves. And if you're speaking against Republicans, fine. You didn't mention anything about Democrat politicians and what they should be doing right now,
Right.
which is nothing. So that's the issue that I had with this article. But like I said, I wanted to be fair because there were people who were saying, including the Daily Beast, who, if actually you can go to this, basically was saying it was the biggest protest in U.S. history, which in and of itself, and I said this to you, I kind of felt away because like 4 years ago, I was participating in the marches for Medicare for All. We were in over 50 cities,
Right.
right? Like, obviously, wasn't getting the crowds that this drew, but that wasn't reported on. That wasn't shown on mainstream media. Hell, even people within independent media didn't cover it. Like, with the exception of like Kyle Kalinske, but he gave the wrong information at like the 11th hour. And he himself didn't show up to the very thing that he tried to promote for Force to Vote. So, yeah, I kind of fell away that this was claiming to be the biggest protest when it was just a day event for people to vent their grievances against Trump. Again, not to say you can't do it, but that kind of goes into what Indie critiques, and we had the discussion on last night that he was goaded by Reef to write this. So this
Do it.
originally,
Do it.
Do it.
To give Indy his flowers, he originally wrote this as a note on Substack, but he got goaded by Reef to actually write an article. So within an hour and a half, he did write this last night. So he titles this article, "The Hypocrisy of the No Kings Rallies." It was a weekend of lots of liberals holding signs and shouting in the streets. There were other groups represented, but there was no cohesive demand or messaging. So Indy continues. What was accomplished? So I've publicly asked multiple times here on Notes a few things about No King's Day that people here seem to be very excited over. I've gotten exactly one response from the 13 plus million people who attended one. What did the people attending the No Kings protest rallies yesterday accomplish? So
this is I
this
gave
was
him this. So this is after the event, right?
right.
To where they even changed the entire event's name. We've changed the No Kings thing or other events around the world to No Tyrant. So it's not to mix messages in a country with a monarchy. I wonder which ones they mean. We're also swapping out No Crowns in favor of No Clowns. Come dressed as a Trump clown. DT himself or one of his cronies. Think bad? Blonde wig, orange face, dog, red tie, or whatever gets your creative juices flowing. That's the voice in my head that read that. But
Right.
dumb.
What happened Saturday is a result of when people turn off their critical thinking skills and just turn out because vibes and feels. There was no actual plan to stop anything, just to complain in public.
Yep.
So this is friend of the show, Jax. Actually, I'll read this in a second. The rally was organized by the party that rigged their last three presidential candidates and partially funded by billionaire heiress of one of the largest employer in the country, who is directly responsible for millions of Americans who work for her company being underpaid, still requiring to be on food stamps, and not giving enough hours to earn a living. This is Walmart. I bought an assortment of tweets for receipts here. So shout out to our friend Jax.
Yep.
So this is the billionaire heiress of Walmart. Honestly, all of you should ban Walmart at all costs.
Yeah.
But she promoted the very thing. She promoted this protest against Trump, but yet she can't play the people that work for her company.
Right.
Make that make sense, people.
Yep.
So I honestly have not heard of most of these programs or organizations.
Right.
But there are a couple that we do know. AFT, I know very well.
Yeah.
ACLU.
Yeah.
Bernie's
American
campaign.
Humanist Association.
American Humanists.
Tax fairness.
So basically all liberal organizations who hate Trump anyway sponsor these protests.
I've seen this one too. I don't remember their name. Black Lives Matter or Black Voters Matter. Sorry. Not to get them confused. Climate Defenders. Yeah. Catholics. Just all of the Catholics in one organization. Just Catholics. Nothing else.
Okay. 13 million people stood in the street or park or wherever with no real demand. Many of them voted for Kamala Harris last November, who, if we recall, was anointed as the eventual Democratic candidate by the donors, like a king/queen.
Yep.
So this is a tweet from Jason D. Meister. Imagine throwing a No Kings protest after your party refused to hold a primary, coordinated Kamala without a single vote, sued to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot, and attempted to remove Trump from state ballots only after your illegal lawfare scheme failed. If there was a modern day monarchy in America, there could be one party you can point to, the Democrats.
See, here's where I disagree, because they're just puppets, bro. Go a little higher, Go a little higher up that feudal ladder. You'll find it. Those are the real kings and queens, dog.
As a reminder of very recent history, Joe Biden was the winner of the 2024 Democratic primary, even though most who voted for him were effectively forced to choose him. Throughout the primary, Democratic Party bosses made it clear that everyone that Biden was going to be the candidate Democrats had to vote for as the incumbent and the only serious challenge to Trump, which we all knew he wasn't.
Yep.
So what happens now? Now, back to Saturday's No Kings facepalm. It's her facepalm emoji here. Day. And now the Democratic Party, again, wants you to believe they would be a positive alternative to Trump and gave people an opportunity to yell Orange Man bad in the streets, funded by the corporate America largely getting in line with Trump's agenda. Tweet from @MaysMoore. Democratic Party, 2016, rigged primary. 2017 to 19, Russia collision hoax. 2020, uses a pandemic to steal an election. 21 through 24, shadow government in control while mentally unfit president is propped up. 2024, no primary candidate installed. 2025, fight the oligarchy. No kings.
Yep.
This seems like it was a little pink pussy hat party 2.0 8 years later. Everyone who attended went home that night, felt a little better about themselves for a day, and then watched World War III continue to unfold, supported by the same Democrats who organized the protest rallies. Nothing fundamentally changed.
Where have we
And we'll
heard
get
that
more
before?
into Iran later. Not one person celebrating No Kings on Saturday wants to answer these questions. What happened on Sunday? What happened on Monday? Is there any follow-up? Any direct action? Any way to make elected officials uncomfortable so they change their behavior? Kind of what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
So this is Ryan at Proud Socialist. The main problem with the No Kings protests is the prevailing liberal sentiment that everything would be great if Kamala was president when Democrats served the same corrupt capitalist and imperial system as Republicans. This is the moment to fight for a new party and a new system. At Primo Radical also tweeted, it's really convenient for Palantir that these huge protests starting up just as people started noticing that they're rolling out the infrastructure for a Black Mirror level surveillance state.
Yep.
At Horror Girl tweeted, I've been to a lot of protests during 2020 era. I don't know. I feel like it didn't get anything done. I'm not saying anything bad to the people that do protest, but I got to work like many other working class people. Thank you for bringing that down. Because I think in a lot of ways, even in protesting in some aspects is a privilege.
Yeah.
Because, you know, well, even on the weekend, you know, there are people who have to work. So they can't necessarily take off in order to scream and complain, you know? So thank you for bringing that perspective. At J7 Politics tweeted, March actively for the defunding of pigs only for liberals to vote for Biden so they could disappear from the movement. Biden then increases the federal funding to pigs, making the whole thing an infuriating cycle. Without militant direct action, nothing will change.
Yep.
This
Derek Bros.
is from Bros. As many people have pointed out, tomorrow's nationwide protests under the banner No Kings are being organized by left-wing groups with connections to the DNC. To me, this is not a surprise at all, nor it is just some hidden conspiracy. The left-wing orgs have long funded protest movements and rallies. What I think is unfortunate is that most of the right-wing or right-wing adjacent indie media is speaking about this as if it's a nationwide plan for mass riots organized by the leftist cabal. While the funding is worth noting, I don't think it is as coordinated as people keep claiming. I've been to many protests over the past 15 years and organized just as many. To pretend like every person who shows up is an agent of the Democrats is just silly. The attendees of these protests typically range from old liberals to college students and a radical leftist or two. And of course, the occasional provocateur. What I also find interesting is that the protest is literally focused on promoting No Kings, but because of the left-right propaganda, some conservatives are acting like that's a bad message. According to the No Kings site, they're speaking out because the Trump admin has cracked down on free speech, detained people from their political positions, threatened to deport American citizens, and defy the courts. I am 100% against those actions and understand why people oppose them. Does that mean I 100% support the people organizing tomorrow's actions? Obviously not. It's the same as me speaking at and attending rallies during COVID 1984 when there were Trump-loving, Blue Lives Matter ref-flaying right-wingers present. I made it clear I didn't support their views on certain topics, but could stand with them against COVID measures. Anyways, I will be attending, documenting, and interviewing people at the protest in Houston, Texas tomorrow. Stay
Which he
tuned for a
did.
report.
And he put stuff up. You go check it out.
Right. So Indy continues in response to
What happened?
any follow-up.
Right.
I didn't think so. Please prove me wrong or explain what was accomplished that has everyone acting like something was. So he tweeted, so he brought this meme from South Park because Indy's a Gen X person. Woke up this morning, still no king. You did it, Libs.
And I brought
And then
this
you
one
brought this, I guess.
because you
Sailor
got to
Moon.
bring Sailor Moon. Yeah, Brunch Libs. My job here is done. Leftists, but you didn't do anything. Wahaha! Fucking away! Like a mission accomplished. Fucking Bush on the fucking aircraft carrier. You know, like
Right.
oh. So go ahead.
You showed this. Hold on. You showed this several months ago.
Yep.
So this is from Michael White. So he talks about how protests are ineffective. So, so I think his mind is, we have to do things differently because the idea of protests now have been co-opted, according to him. So
Yeah.
we'll play this and we'll finalize our thoughts.
Action.
But as you've studied history, and I know this is something you love, is just looking at historical movements, trying to understand how you create change. I mean, what are the ways change happens in your estimation now, if it's not taking to the streets?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the core messages that I'm trying to get across is I'm not saying don't protest. I think what I'm trying to say is we need to reconceive what protest is. Protest, if you look at it historically, what it is it's really a behavior that's culturally defined. People have protested differently throughout human history. I mean, during the American Revolution, they tarred and feathered people or pulled down their houses, or during the Civil Rights era, we marched. And I think now we've reached a point where the current repertoire of our tactics, they're broken. And the reason why they're broken, if you kind of look at why they're broken, is because the story underlying why we protest is false. And that basic story has something to do with that it's kind of a mystical, magical thinking. It has something to do with if you can get large numbers of people in the streets, they manifest some sort of greater power over their democracy, which makes perfect sense in a certain way, because if you can get so many people into the streets saying something, of course their leaders should have to listen to them, but it's not true. It's really not true. So we have to think about, well, how do the people manifest a greater power over their governments? And that gets into these questions of sovereignty, it gets into these other issues. And I think that that's really the direction we need to go, is that we can no longer rely on the fact that we are able to get millions of people into the streets. We act as activists as if that's extremely difficult, but recent years have shown us, since Occupy Wall Street, it's actually very easy for us now. We can get women to march, scientists to march, we can get Black Lives Matter to march. We have to kind of go differently, a little bit deeper. I think the path forward is very hard, but I think that it's going to be fundamentally more rewarding.
Yeah, I think just thinking about this, hearing this for the fourth time, the tactics that we're using now to protest, I don't want to say they're antiquated. There's definitely a place for them. But think about what he said. Like during the revolution, they tarred and feathered people. During the civil rights movement, I would argue it was Black led, but it was multicultural in terms of, people who came out and showed up, So those were tactics essentially to get the powers that be scared, Revolution, you had regular schmegular men, because it was white men with guns. So they were willing to shoot you in order for you to make change. Back in the 60s, like billions of people, like white, Black, and all different colors of the rainbow were coming out to say, we hate this,
Right.
which at that time, especially since it was coming out of segregation, was probably something that would have scared politicians at that time. So the question is essentially, in this current age, what is the things that we need to do in order to scare the people in government? Because if they're walking alongside with you, they're not scared of you. And they're not going to do anything for you. Like the way that you get change is to grab them by the balls and actually have them start reassessing their lives. That's the point that we need to get at. I don't know what that will take, but those are the things that we need to discuss, I think, collectively in terms of protesting. And I think right now we're just kind of being lazy. And yeah, I think the idea, as Micah has said, it's very easy now to get people on the streets, especially with social media. But it's the act of, okay, you're getting people on the streets. What is it going to take for politicians to actually move in a way that they're forced to make change beyond what their donors tell them?
Well, and you have to stop their like money making ability in some way or form. As just as far
Right.
as like you got to put your body on the gears of the empire somehow. Whether
Right.
that's
So the idea
stopping
that
shipments from being able to get there, or you see what people like PAL Action and like it's going to take risks. Like sacrifices will have to be made.
right.
And
So
like
the idea that like corporations that are the problem
right,
are giving money for you to complain should make you give you the side eye,
right,
because corporations themselves are the problem.
yeah,
So why is the problem basically stoking the fire to the problem that you are trying to fix?
yeah,
Right? I don't think people think of that, but it's true. It's like, again, why in the hell is Walmart, why is the billionaire heiress of Walmart donating towards a No Kings protest when she herself is responsible for the very issues that people have to go up against? Of
right.
course, they're going to relate it all to Trump, but they're not going after her. And I think that's the point, is the idea of like, these organizations and these corporations need to be, and obviously we've seen some of this in the past, with the Occupy movement, but there needs to be a lot more of that to kind of share, like, as you said, control the money. That's what,
Well, and I've said it a ton of
politicians fear,
times too.
because
A lot of these protests are like awareness based, like they're just trying to get viewers and eyeballs to it to some degree, so that like theoretically more people are aware of the issue and can individually do things to like, but like awareness ain't the fucking problem anymore. Like everyone kind of knows. You ask the average person in the street, they know their government is fucked, regardless of like who's in office. They know the problems. They can clearly see the problems. It's just politicians are not willing to do any of the solutions that we've known about for years. And it's because their donors have more power over them than we do. So I don't know how to beat that. There's a lot of like power above us that is trying to stop us from changing anything. So, but it's definitely not, salsing down rodeo,
right.
like,
Look, and I said this on Twitter, I'm not opposed for people airing out their grievances in the streets. You
yeah,
should do that. You have a right to do that. But if you're looking to make change, just doing it for one day, just screaming and then going home and things are okay or seemingly okay, is
right,
not going to help. It's not going to bring change. Like, as Indy said, how are you engaging people in collective actions that will target the donor and corporate class, that will actually make them weak in the knees to actually say uncle?
yep,
Unless we're having those discussions, then these protests are really just for show and just a way for liberal minds to kind of tap themselves on the shoulder saying, I did something towards change, when it really doesn't do anything. So, and it's funny because I was arguing with people even last night about how, like, you know, honestly, you all should be, not you guys necessarily, but like a lot of liberals, you should have been protesting forever.
yeah,
If anything, this should not have been the first protest in a minute, like Gaza aside. Like, there should be protests really every single fucking day. Like, how many of these issues has Biden been complicit in? In regards to healthcare, in regards to war, in regards to a living wage. Like, these are issues that were issues under Biden, but you all were at brunch. Again, not
yep,
you guys in here, like, but just generally. Like, but then because the big boogeyman of a person you don't like is in power, then you decide, oh, we actually have to do something. Meanwhile, there are plenty of marginalized communities in our country that have begged and pleaded you all to actually do something for decades. And you don't give a damn. So to me, it just kind of comes off as, lip service and just as a way for you guys just to feel like, and funny, this guy was saying like, morally, like he used morals. Like, no, it's not about morals. It's just doing
it's just like that.
decent
Do you remember when we talked about the Kamala Harris art?
Mhm.
Like it's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's all just like emotional based like reasoning.
response.
Right.
It's all based on, as Indy said, it's all based on the vibes and the feels and the emotions of it all, because you guys are so, and again, a lot of it is, and I'm going to say something that people are going to be like, fuck you, but I don't care. A lot of it is because you're afraid that Trump is infringing upon the very rights that you think you have. That's why you're making an effort now to do something. But when
I
people's
have a right.
rights
You
have
have no right.
been,
We have a right. They don't have a right. Folks, I hate to spoil your fun, but there's no such thing as rights, okay? They're imaginary. We made them up, like the boogeyman.
right. But when marginalized people's rights have been affected for a long time, and they've begged and they've pleaded and screamed for solidarity,
Right.
where were you? So I'm sorry. Like, I get it, but it doesn't come off as genuine to me, because God forbid that we get a Democratic president within the next few years. You're just going to go back to the same old,
Right,
same
back to
old.
fucking brunch.
And like,
there was literally a fucking post about someone like, we'd be at brunch if Trump wasn't in office. Like, yeah.
Right.
You fucking
Which
would be.
I have to wonder if that person was being ironic on purpose.
Right.
I do have to wonder that. But the optics of that was still bad.
Real
because, because it's very much true. Like, especially with what's happening in Gaza right now, people would live under the illusion that Kamala would do something, even though now it's been reported that there was no effort on the Biden administration that they pushed Israel for a ceasefire. Kamala herself said that she wasn't going to do anything different from what Biden was doing, but somehow they would be convinced that Kamala would actually do something. So it just gives them the excuse to live in La La Land. Meanwhile, we're bombing the Middle East. So, and the idea of calling that out, if it were her, would have been like, we'd be tarred and feathered, essentially. But it's easy to do that under Trump, I suppose. Because he's the problem. No, he's a part of the problem that unfortunately Democrats laid the groundwork for. And
they're only
he's
protesting
exploiting
like
that.
social issues, if at all. Zero the economics is what's being protested, as always.
Right.
So yep. Just felt like feels and vibes. So
yeah. So anyway, if you see Indy, thank him for the article. It is linked in the description if you want to read it on your own. I think I read most of it, if not all. But let him know how much you liked it. And actually, do you agree with him? Let us know, and let Indy know in the comments below. And if you want to continue supporting us financially, again, Indy wrote this, so this is what your money helps do. It helps us to be motivated and inspired to write and create segments and write articles like these that we get to talk about and share with you all. So that's the benefit of independent media, is that it's led by you. So if you want to continue, if you want us to see doing more work like this, especially if you want to help financially, you can scan the QR code you see at the screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there. Or if you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the link will pop up and you can click and donate there. You can also donate on Substack, PayPal, and CashApp. Those links are in the description below. And as we always say, we know that times are hard. So the best and free way you can support us is by liking, subbing, and sharing our content. And let us know, did you go to No King's protest? Why or why not? Did you think they were a success than what the media was saying they were? Do you agree with Indy's criticisms and ours by extension of why that to us they're not effective? And what ways do you think we should be doing to challenge the powers that be that would actually lead to radical change? Again, that's going to be kind of a tough thing to think about, but let us know what you're thinking in the comments in the chat or in the comments if you're seeing the clip of this. And help us get to free K. We're approaching 2,500. So maybe we can get to free K by the end of the year. We really do appreciate the people who are subbing to us. And thanks for watching.
Thank you!